Good evening, everybody. It is 5:30. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. If everybody could rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In our chambers, we follow the pledge with a moment of silence. So if you would mind this brief time for prayer, reflection, and meditation, and keep in mind our first responders and the men and women in the military during your brief time. All right, thank you. I'm Andy Dance. It's my honor to chair the meeting today. I picked a short straw, but that's okay. It's working together with my colleagues up here is an honor. We're meeting today in this joint workshop to discuss issues that are impacting our communities, to continue with this collaborative approach to addressing our challenges that we started back in June, challenges that affect the future of the entirety of Flagler County. So we've got a list we want to follow the agenda as it's been presented. So we have moments for Flagler Beach, Flagler County, and the town of Marineland. Is there anybody who wants to add anything to the agenda? I have one item from Commissioner Sullivan. He wants to briefly talk about tourism statistics, so we'll add that, if it's okay with everybody, to the end of item B. Yes, Councilwoman.
To address the mall comfort issue that was part of the this morning.
Okay.
Commissioner Dance, if you would just let everybody know to speak on the microphone. They need to hit the button and the little red light.
Mics are turned on. You'll see the red button at the base.
Thank you.
Chair Dance. Underneath City of Flagler Beach, about halfway down, it has increased marketing of existing parks. That was actually a Palm Coast-driven initiative, so I just wanted to see if we could just put that under Palm Coast rather than City of Flagler Beach.
Okay, so we'll make an item of D at the end for Palm Coast items, and we'll do that for the marketing and the second item for Malacambra. And I appreciate everybody's time. So as we respect everybody's time coming here this evening, let's try to keep the meeting as concise as we can. I think once we pass the 1 hour mark, I'll be a little conscious of trying to make sure everybody finishes up in a timely manner. I don't want to shorten up our conversations, but think we should be respectful of the time. So anything from an hour to an hour and a half, I think, would be appropriate. With that, I'll turn over the mic to the City of Flagler Beach, and you guys have the floor.
All right, thank you, Chair. First item on here, well, actually, before we even get into the first item, just as a follow-up from the last meeting, is City of Flagler Beach committed to doing a study of beachgoers, which to determine, who is out there on the beach. Are they locals? Are they tourists? What percentage of each of that exists? And where that stands is the study has not kicked off yet, but Commission has approved the initiative, and Commission has approved funding that goes with it. And then, City staff is working on putting that together and implementing it. The only drawback is the numbers will be skewed a little bit. This will probably need to be a two-part study because we're going into off-season. So the dynamic's totally different, but it's still, we're still warm, and there's still a lot of people out at the beach, but we're going to need to also hit this again as a two-part later on, in spring, summer of next year to really get a good idea of what's happening out there.
Sure. Just during our Flagler County time, I've got something to show. I've got something to put up on the screen to help with that and tell you where we are, with the Tourist Development Council and all that. So, good.
Okay, excellent info. I just wanted to give that follow-up before we get in. So the first item that we have is begin discussion on how to collaboratively create a solution to implement improvements in the increasing homeless population now being seen throughout county. I know this has been worked on at the county level, and it's been a topic for a while. And I'm sure everybody is aware of the new legalities. It's ever-changing legalities concerning, the homeless population and what is the right thing to do for those residents and even transient folks that are passing through. And this was brought up because it looks like if we look at the macro environment that's going on in the country, the homeless population is not going to go down. It's growing exponentially, and we as a county are right on a couple main corridors. We have the I-95 corridor, we have the A1A corridor, and those are big corridors for homeless and transient folks to get through. And a lot of them stay. The issue becomes if we don't, as a municipality or county, have any way to accommodate those folks, and they in fact claim residency in a given municipality or county, then if they are on municipality property, you can't tell them to leave because they're a resident. Unless you have accommodations for them. The only other option would be to have, law enforcement or another agency transport them to, say, Volusia County, where there is a shelter. But then if they are a resident, you have to be there at 6 a.m. to pick them up and bring them back. So if you have, say, homeless folks that say they're residents living in your park, which is owned by a given municipality, they have a right to be there. And unless you have another accommodation for them. So in Commissioner Spradley, you're a lawyer, so I know you've been talking with our city attorney on it. It is an issue for our municipality. And I know because I see it, it's also an issue for, certain areas of Palm Coast, and I don't travel a whole lot, so I don't know much about the county. But one of the concepts that might be worth talking about is for finances would be something like what we all do collectively with the Humane Society. So we have a accommodation area. We have one unit that is designed to take care of a given purpose. And that is paid in by all municipalities with their fair share to help support that. We do that, like the city of Flagler Beach, I believe we pay $16,000 a year to the Humane Society, plus a couple other financial agreements to keep that in operation. But I think that, and I would want to, and I'm going to turn this over to everybody to kind of roundtable it. We probably sooner than later are going to have to implement this because of the unexpected and exponential increase in the homeless population that we're seeing. And also the new legalities that each municipality has with the folks that are there. You can't run people out. As I know that was widely in the press a couple of years ago, where there was, different tactics in different areas about just trying to push people out. And you can't do that. They have rights. And we also have obligations to that. And I wanted to see what everybody thought about that whole initiative, where the county is with the homeless population. What do y'all foresee in the next 3 to 5 years, and what's the best response to it?
So I guess if you can give me a finger, some suggestion for being, I saw you.
Okay.
So just letting everybody know so I can turn my head both ways and try and acknowledge you to speak. But yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Angela Tembrick, the town of Marineland's mayor. So during the storm, we had a gentleman who's been living in our woods. And not only is he homeless, but he has mental health issues. So there is no accommodations in the region, it seems, until you hit Jacksonville for if you're homeless and you have mental health issues. And I believe, being the county that we are, I think it is mindful of us to think of some way to manage our population of homelessness, especially in the situation of storms. We had a kind of a crisis. This gentleman was, claimed mental health issues, was trying to, and we tried to figure how we were going to place him. And so we went to the EOC and asked, put a ticket in, and we were unable to. So not only in our day-to-day situation with the transient folks who are walking the scenic A1A, we encounter at our beach and in our bathhouses and so forth, but I think as well that we must be mindful of when we have storm situations. We don't want to put them in a handicap shelter or another kind of shelter. What do we do? And so I think we need to think about, facilities. And I mean, we're a small town, but we would like to be a part of something where we know that folks who are transient residents can have a place to go. So I support your idea.
Thank you.
I think we first have to understand that it's a lifestyle. These are people that want to be out there. They don't want shelter. They want to be able to go out and do their thing. We know that there's two types. There is the drug addicts, and there are the mental. Unfortunately, with the mental, most of them were on prescriptions before they hit the street. Now they're not getting those prescriptions, and they become a problem. And the drug and alcohol, providing the services is getting them to go to them. So what is the solution? Housing them? Most of them won't go. So therefore, I would say for their health and welfare and their well-being, we should be reaching out, trying to communicate with healthcare and whatever it takes, or getting them back on their medication so that they will think normal. Otherwise, I don't think there is a solution to the problem. I think it will continue. But it's a lifestyle. If you talk to them, they don't want to go anywhere where they're at. They'll sleep out under the stars, they'll sleep under the bridge. I understand that the new walkover on 100 out there, they've already started showing up at the south end of that bridge, that walkover bridge. And I don't know, is there a way to get to them in a group and talk to them and find out what their feelings are? Myself personally, I think the only thing and responsibility for the county is the health and welfare of them. If they're off their drugs, we got to figure a way to make that happen again. If they're in alcohol problem and drug problem, then we got to figure a way that we can treat that or get them somewhere that's going to be taken care of. That's my attitude towards it.
Mayor.
Mayor Emmett, I would never disagree with you unless I had to, however. There was an article that appeared this week in the Wall Street Journal. The title of it is, "Why More Baby Boomers Are Sliding into Homelessness." It's really a very interesting article, and the reason I bring it up is that this is not a local, county, or even a regional problem. I need to elevate this to a national problem. This is a problem that the entire country is going to face, and the reason I say that is not because it relieves us of any responsibility, but my first thought would be to increase our legislative priorities to include approaching the federal government on what funding would be available there, because money is at the base of all of this, we understand that. And then also going to Tallahassee. In other words, I would think that we should exhaust those two potential resources to find out what can be had and lead the charge from there. The nuts and bolts of the facility, where it should be, how many people, and on, would require experts and a study, and probably is somewhat seasonal, as is your study going to reflect. But I would like to appeal to, again, the federal government in Tallahassee to find out what we might bring forward from there.
Mr. Sullivan.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything everybody said has truth in it. The county has been having to deal with the homeless problem here in the county. It's in our social services part of what we have to do. And a couple of things. We do go out and monitor the homeless population as we can. And for instance, it's everything from two teenagers who decided they don't want to live at home, they head south and they end up in Florida. A lot of times, just give me a couple of bus tickets back to where they live takes care of. So there's also a third group like that. We also have veterans who are homeless, and they come under separate rules. You really, if a veteran does not want to go to a home or be taken away, there's very little you can do about it. It's true of most people, but veterans are in a special case. So at the county, we do try to monitor the number of homeless and try to contact them about once every 2 weeks to find out if there's something that can be done. But there is a hard core of homeless that there's very little that we can do here. There was an attempt about 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, to coordinate with Volusia. They were building a new homeless shelter down there, and there was an attempt to do about, for us to cover from this county about 25% of the operational cost for that homeless shelter. But in the end, that fell through. So we don't have a specific location where people would say, yes, I'd like to go to a homeless shelter and be fed and so on and so forth. So the last number of verified homeless that I saw for the county was in the neighborhood of a little under 100. And I know people say, oh, that's nowhere near the number, but that's the number that when we do an analysis that we've come up with. And I haven't had an update on that this year, but that's kind of where we are. So we have the social services responsibility. Kind of we're doing what we can with the various parts of what we do. We try to interview the homeless, but it's not a problem that's going to simply go away. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing in the county right now. So it's not we're not doing anything, but we don't have plans to build a homeless shelter, and we're trying to monitor the situation and provide comfort along with our the groups that try to help, the churches and things like that. So that's where we are right now. There's no plan right now to build a homeless shelter.
Scott Spradley, Flagler Beach. I agree also with what has been said, but I think what I wanted to point out is for example, in my capacity as a bankruptcy lawyer, times aren't good and they're not going to get better anytime soon. So while the groups that have been identified as homeless are certainly worthy of a comment, there are many who don't fall into any of the categories we've talked about. We're talking about people who are not there voluntarily, who are doing anything that they possibly can not to be homeless. And that's the number that I see. And I think as a coastal community, and I don't have any statistics to back this up, but it seems like people kind of head to the coast. It just seems like we've got our share of our percent of population that are without housing, and I just don't see it as getting any better. So any solutions that we can begin to brainstorm about, I think would be welcome, and it encompasses a lot of different groups of people. Thank you.
Yeah, Angela Timbrook, Mayor of Marineland. So inflation, we have a whole variety of societal issues. So I kind of like to think of things in 30, 60, what do we have if we have a problem, we have a storm coming and we have homelessness. And that's, to be something we have to deal with soon. What do we deal with in a year? What do we do in 5 years? And so I think that we should, as a group, have an idea about where our homeless population would go. For me, I need somebody off my beach and who are living in my woods. I need to know what we can do for them from the county. And so I think, not to beat the drum, but I just think that we all must be mindful of it's a health safety issue. And so I think that we need to be thinking in forward-thinking steps of what do we do now, what do we hope to do, and what will we do, and so that we can be mindful of our citizens.
So, Mayor Emmett, just to kind of bring things full circle. So currently right now, if you have a homeless or transient resident that's taking up shelter, say in your given park, and they claim residency, you can't ask them to leave because you have to take responsibility for them. If you have a shelter, at that point as a municipality, you can ask them to leave, you can bring them to the shelter, because now you have appropriate accommodation for them. If there is an agreement with Volusia, you could also ask them to leave, but then you're responsible for bringing them there and you're responsible for bringing them back, should they decide that they want to come back. Since this is a discussion that is a long outlook discussion, 3 to 5 year type thing, I think one of the questions that I would have for this particular board would be, if this was a shared cost initiative across the county, is it worth asking your respective boards if there's an appetite to collectively, with all municipalities paying into that, to start at least looking at that as being an initiative? I worry that if we don't start planning it now, it will end up being a crisis, and then we'll have to react as a county to figure out how to get ahead of it. Where now we would have the affordability of doing what Mayor Alphen said is, go to the state, pursue all the funding, reduce the costs, and then collectively we as municipalities could, potentially move forward with that initiative. So I guess that's my question to this board. Is there even an appetite, or is it not an appetite in, either way?
I think that's what we take these issues back. I
Right.
mean, the beauty of getting together as a group is to be able to share those ideas and then bring them back to our constituents to further, debate and come up with ideas. I think the next step, right, some of these come back again and we debate some more. I have one last question. Mayor Emmett, did you have another?
I'm asking a question, I guess. Is there a concentrated area within the county? I'm not talking about a home or house or anything. An area where they could be concentrated to one spot where they would have portal johns, or, they're pretty good at putting up their own tents and their own livelihood type of thing, okay? Where if they're concentrated and they're picked up by local police or whoever, they have a place to take them and drop them off, that this is the area for the homeless. And you'll receive food and water, some amenities, okay? Because right now they'd spread themselves all over. They're sitting on the mediums and with their signs, trying to solicit money, and that's panhandling. That's the way I refer to it. But if they're concentrated to a specific area, it seems like they do concentrate to an area, but it's usually an area that after a period of time, people get so upset with it that they shoo them out, right? So I agree with you. It's a long-term solution, to get to where we can actually provide and take care of them. But it seems like you got to get them together, okay? In one specific area that they identify as being their homeless area. That they can go there and they know there's Portal John, they can go there and know there's some running water and whatever. And look at it that way and see if there's anything you can do in the future to build some type of portable shelter, you know what I'm saying? But they're very individualistic, the ones I've talked to.
I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and, I think, final comment so we can continue on. In the short period of time since the agenda was put out, I did get to do a little bit of research. Every January, the count of the homeless is required by federal mandate from HUD. So Flagler is grouped together with Volusia as a reporting entity, but there is subgroup data. And what I received was that the most recent data from January is there's 61 homeless people in Flagler County, 32 of which were already in some type of shelter, transitional shelter, or taking advantage of the cold weather shelter. The numbers were 1 in Flagler Beach, 7 in Palm Coast, 41 in Bunnell, and 12 unspecified, or you could say in the remainder of the county. We've got numerous agencies that we'll be able to pull from. So Commission on Homelessness and Housing, the First Step Shelter, which Commissioner Sullivan referenced, which Volusia County funds. Talked briefly with the Sheriff's Office about the issue, so got some additional info from the Sheriff's Office. Volusia County Coalition for the Homeless, and Family Renew, which is transitional housing. And I think the other one item we can add to this, and maybe on the next agenda, is the need for transitional housing. So there's some people that are in a bind that need the help to get on their feet again. Mayor Emmett referenced some people that are just decide that this is their lifestyle, and they don't need help. They don't want help from anybody. But I think a transitional housing component for those that do want to get out of that issue due to the economy or other issues is an opportunity. So good discussion. Thank you for bringing that forward. I think we'll continue to elaborate on that and maybe set some more specifics or take it back to your boards and we'll get back together again. I think also getting agendas out in some advanced time will allow us to better formulate some responses. I felt kind of rushed in doing some research on these on our limited time, but we can do a better job of planning that at least. So we'll go to the second item from the City of Flagler Beach was about paid parking. And Mr. Cooley, did you want to continue to take the lead on these?
Yes, had a couple comments on that. So this was a discussion that was brought up from the first meeting, and this is just based on how kind of the first meeting started, where there's a funneling effect of all of the county residents. If you want beach access, they more or less need to go to this small geographic area that has a finite number of parking spots that every year when we have a hurricane seems to get less and less because the parking on A1A goes away every time that there's a road improvement. We lost parking on South Side a couple years ago. This time we lost a big chunk on North Side. So I think that part of the discussion about how to get all our county residents to have adequate beach access without having to be pushed into the geographic bottleneck of Flagler Beach, because in 5 years that will actually be untenable. One of the symptoms of that is in order to have productive parking spots, I think it's inevitable that Flagler Beach will end up going to paid parking. Now, I am not saying that there is something in the pipeline right now to do that, but based on, it's just a matter of numbers. You have so many spots and you have so many residents. As the residents of the county continue to grow at an exponential rate, for instance, in conversation, right now there is in the pipeline 14,000 residences that have been approved that are to be built in the pipeline. And that's between homes and apartments. And you figure average, the average carrying capacity, each one of them is probably 2. So you have 28,000 new residents that are currently in the pipeline to come here. And that number was actually, that was researched in the beginning of summer, and there's been a lot of approval since then. So, it can be assumed that probably sooner than later, Flagler Beach is going to be put in a spot where we have to have our parking areas as productive as possible. And the only way to do that and be able to bear the cost of maintaining all that additional wear and tear on them is to go to paid parking. What that's going to do, though, is that's going to create a macro effect where there's going to be a shift of a certain amount of population that's going to say, I'm not going to go there because they have paid parking. I'm going to go to, as Commissioner Sullivan talked about, the 6 hidden beaches. And then the question becomes, do those have the carrying capacity to handle all of the citizens that are going to be trying to get to the beach on a given Saturday when it's nice? Especially, keep in mind, this is a 3-5+ year outlook. When we have a county population that's going to be anywhere between 150 approaching 200,000 people, where do those people go to get to the beach? And that's why paid parking was on there. Just want to get thoughts on that. Aaron.
Question again. The oceanfront on A1A, on the east side, where they all park down through. Is there a possibility of the parking meters? Now, I know that's people are gonna jump up in the air over that, okay? But there also is, if the residents that live within Flagler Beach, they could be exempt from that by having some type of sticker put in their car. I understand that you'd have to probably do a contractor or somebody, but that revenue that comes off those meters, and I would assume that you would get a good chunk of that, that is gonna offset your expense for expansion to the beach and all that good stuff, right? Been a long time. I know that people get hostile when they hear that, but if they feel that they're gonna be, the residents I'm talking about, will be treated fairly by giving a sticker to put in their window that they do free parking. Just the residents of Flagler Beach.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to paid parking, I could give probably 8 or 10 very strong pros for it and an equal number of cons for it. We did a study in Flagler Beach about 10 years ago, I think it was, and I was on the committee. We met monthly for 2 years, and we sorted through all of these issues, but a lot of those issues have changed because of technology. One of the reasons it did not seem feasible back then was because of the wear and tear on meters, and we had experts who came in and said they're not going to last very long, and there was a huge turnover. And then in enforcement, all the costs would go to enforcement, for a meter maid or whatever the title would be, and everything involved with that, so that it was a net zero at the time. That has changed. So if we're looking at it from a revenue perspective, you needn't have meters. You have one location where you input your tag number, something like that, and then then your tag gets read, and so it's the automation changes it somewhat, but that's one factor, the economics. So I would say the economics has improved. Some of the other factors, residents wanting a pass or needing a pass or deserving a pass. And then you've got business owners and their employees. What do they do with parking? So my view is I haven't decided, because I don't have updated knowledge as to whether I think that would be a solution, but it certainly, I agree with Commissioner Cooley, it needs to be looked at again, because it could be that the pros are outweighing the cons at this point in time.
Go ahead.
One of my commissioners came to me, because we've been studying the situation for Flagler Beach, and she did bring up something that is true. Where A1A butts right into, when 100 butts right into A1A at the traffic light, that is a problem. And that problem is that people are crossing there and whatever, parking. If you guys could take and just prohibit that parking down just a little bit so that trucks coming in and whatnot can negotiate that turn. I've seen it myself. Some of them cannot make that turn down there because of the cars being too close. That might be something you could take care of quick. Okay? I'm sorry.
Mayor Alvin.
Just quickly, I didn't attend the last meeting, but there are examples of cities and other parts, beachside cities in other parts of the country that for the 50 years that I know about have used the beach pass concept. And I don't know if I just want to make sure that we have considered it. You guys know a lot more about the mechanics of actually executing that. But I'm thinking that additionally, beach passes could, at differing prices or values, help to spread the use of the beach. In other words, your prime territory, just like real estate, would be at one cost, and your less close-in real estate might be at another cost. It's just for discussion.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, just at the last meeting, I just wanted to remember, at the last meeting, we had a couple of people brought up this. Number one, right now, we have done some additional help by signage and showing people where parking lots are. So I do think it's worthy of discussion, and it's going to become a bigger and bigger problem. But right now, 2 or 3 of the people brought up that, say you put meters along the high-use spots along A1A, well, people say, well, that'll just force the parking back into the city onto the more private streets. So it's not an easy solution. I got the feeling from talking to people on it that right now, with the designated parking areas and signage that we put in, things aren't too bad, unless it's July 4th or something like that. But it's a good time to think about it and come up with solutions. I know I remember beach passes and all that. The problem is tourists aren't going to have, I mean, I guess they'd have to go someplace to get the beach pass and so forth. So you're setting up structure and infrastructure and employees and all that kind of thing. So, you know, it's something to really think through carefully.
Yes.
So one of the things, as far as meters go, I was just up in St. Augustine and went to Ripley's, believe it or not, and each parking space had a QR code. And you scan the code, you pay it, and that's your space. And so if they had someone to monitor just one person, the QR codes, to make sure that those were paid. So that eliminates the need of, you know, people looking for quarters or trying to pay, or finding one location and then having to walk back to their vehicle and putting a slip in there. So I thought that was pretty ingenious of them to have that in front of each space, a QR code. You scanned it, paid for your parking, and you were good to go for an hour. So.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may. Yeah, so meters are pretty much a thing of the past now. If you go to any metro area, they have one sign or multiple signs with QR codes. You scan them, and then it's just enforcement. And all meters of any style, even, you know, having meters at some certain points, those are all a thing of the past. It's all done through this now. But just to kind of recenter the conversation, because this is a very far forward-looking conversation, with the assumption that at some point Flagler Beach will be going to paid parking. That has to be an assumption that at some point, we don't know when. You know, I'm sure the body we will wait until it's absolutely necessary. But the question becomes, will all of our county residents and our Palm Coast residents be able to have good beach access if Flagler Beach does go to paid parking? Is that, you know, the question becomes, how will that affect the very limited capacity of the other beaches? Because I'm sure there's going to be a push to go to those beaches. And I think that's one of the big considerations, because I think it just needs to be stated that it is probably inevitable that it's going to happen at some point in the relatively near future. So if it does, as different municipalities, how do we respond to the way all of our population is going to move when that happens? I guess this is the real question.
And Commissioner Sullivan, one final.
Yeah, just quickly, across from the Funky Pelican, that used to be a parking lot that people would use, and the owner decided he wanted to charge there. Every time I go by, no one's there. And so that's really the first place where we're charging to be at the beach, and nobody's using it, right? And so it's a subtle thing how you balance all that out for the future, but that parking lot across from the pier is a good example. Well, somebody tried getting people to pay for parking, and it's not being used.
Right, which is proof that there will be a shift in beach access if that happens. And that's kind of really the question. Mayor or Chair Dance?
That's true. But we're not talking today. We're talking 5 to 10 years from now, when this county is grown out to the point that Route 100 out there is going to look like Speedway Boulevard. It's coming. So there's going to be a growth. And I can tell you right now, Flagler Beach is going to be swamped. They're not going to be able to handle it. So you have to come up with some method to control it. And I hate to say it, it's the purse, you know, whether it's parking meters or whatever you guys decide. And that will work, because people will get to the beach. They want to go, they're going to pay. That's just the way it is, okay? It's a fact of life, okay? And I think that's something seriously you have to look at down the road, okay?
And I could just say, as you get closer and debate it, we'll be able to respond accordingly. The good thing is, in some of the other parks, there's lots of parking, and if we have to adjust and add some additional, be it paved or grass parking in some of the other facilities to accommodate, I think whether you do that or not, that's probably in our future anyway. So, but we will keep in tune with what Flagler Beach does. That's a pretty specific issue for you guys to solve, and then we will act accordingly. And if you want to go to the next issue, again, this is a pretty wide-ranging issue, which probably could take all of an hour in and of itself. So I don't know the specifics to this issue that we wanted to bring up, but if you wanted to kind of narrow this focus for us, that would be very helpful.
Well, last meeting, and Tina, I believe you brought this up, or was it Catherine? Okay. So this really wasn't a Flagler Beach initiative per se. Flagler, I hate saying it, but I will, because it's just a fact. Flagler Beach does not have affordable housing. We don't even have affordable land. So it very much is an issue. But Catherine, I'll let you take the lead on that, because that was really not a City of Flagler Beach initiative per se.
Well, it's not a City of Bunnell just issue either. It's a community issue. It's a country issue. It's a state issue. And when you have 1,300 people every day coming to Florida, and they have to have a place to live, and the prices are going up, inflation's an issue, mortgages are up, and that's going to beget more homeless. That's my concern, is that whole connection of the numbers are small with homeless now, but I'm not convinced that's an accurate number. Just because somebody says that's what it is doesn't necessarily mean that I believe it. But affordable housing, contemporary housing, workforce housing, we're talking about that same range of folks that are struggling. And when you have one person who has to pay $2,000 a month for rent, they can't afford that. And I was in another meeting and talking about my granddaughter who was renting a room out in someone's home, and she has a decent job and promotions, but she can't afford to live on her own by herself. So I just brought that up because I just think that it's one of those things that if we have better ideas about how to work with that. I know the Live Local legislature passed that, and we've had some seminars about that, and Mayor Alfin mentioned a comment about that today at another meeting we were at, about the progression of those legislative laws that have been passed and how that's going to continue to be processed. So I just have a concern about it and want to bring it up.
And I think, again, a huge issue. So I need us to find a focus, if we can, on this, because this is such big. I'm going to ask, we'll be right with you, Commissioner. Mayor Alfin, have you heard through the legislative process if Live Local is getting another look, and if there's any suggested policy changes coming up?
Yes, actually, Commissioner Sullivan and I both have done some research, and the legislation that was proposed in the past session is quite frankly half-baked. It's a concept, it's an idea which partitions the construction so that some percentage of construction would be affordable. However, the legislation is not complete. It will be addressed in the upcoming session, and we can only hope that it provides guidance that we can use locally. But again, it's going to have to be wrapped into each of our comprehensive plans and or zoning issues to make it work. I would just add one more thing if I could. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm going to be the numbers guy here. So if you're looking at a starting career, a younger person perhaps, or not necessarily younger, of an $80,000 career starting salary, which in today's world, believe it or not, is not out of the realm. The most expensive housing they can afford is about $225,000. I can tell you that the median home price in the city of Palm Coast is approaching $400,000. So that should tell us something. It should tell us that what we all need to do is find another manufacturing supply chain of manufactured housing that can come in finished at 2.25, so that folks that are coming in at starting salaries can afford to own a home and enjoy the American dream of wealth, of increasing wealth through owning a home.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I want to be the bad guy here. This group was set up to do problems, this group was, well, I'm pretty loud, but this group was set up to do problems kind of associated with how the county can support the city of Flagler Beach as we face problems in the future. We've already been told there is no affordable housing, basically, in Flagler Beach. There are many other groups and many other committees in this county that discuss things like affordable housing and that side of things. I just think it's an issue that wastes time for this particular group right now. It's obviously incredibly important, but I think we should drop it from the agenda. It doesn't really, there are many other groups like the mayor's group and other county groups and city groups trying to do this. So I'm being a bad guy here, but at some point we have to cut down on what we're going to talk about. And we can talk about affordable housing for the rest of the night, but I think we ought to just let that one go for the time being.
Mayor Emmett.
The key word here is affordable. That's the key word. You're talking about what's coming to this county is going to be the blue-collar workers that support all the other things. They can't afford those $250,000 homes or more. They're looking at apartments and them type of complexes, right? And they got to be able to pay their rents and their bills. The blue-collar worker is going to show up big here in this county. Big. So that's, I won't say any more.
All right, and I think, is there any final comments on this side? Otherwise, I'm just going to recognize my fellow Affordable Housing Advisory Committee members, so raise your hands out there. Thank you. That's open to the public, our meetings, so please come join us and listen to the discussions. It's a state-mandated committee, and there's lots of work that goes on there, and glad to see our members in attendance, and appreciate it.
Chairman, I have
yes,
a question.
ma'am.
Is there money associated with that affordable housing committee?
Is there money?
Uh-huh.
There's money through the state for different types of affordable housing, so if you have further questions, we'll
Yes, please send me
address
an
that.
invite.
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely, yep. All right, we're going to move the marketing down, and the next one would be expansion of lifeguard coverage throughout the county.
Thank you, Chair. So this was basically posed as a question, and just to give a little bit of background on it. So within the city of Flagler Beach, you have the geographic funneling effect of all the county residents going to this one little small area to be able to have beach access. And then within that small area of beach access, there's an even smaller area of guarded beach. And the question was posed last meeting about going back to respective boards and looking at, is it feasible to look at adding guarded coverage in different areas of the county outside of Flagler Beach, just to help spread it out? Because if you want to go swimming in the ocean, there's only one spot, and it's a very small spot, when you consider an entire county to have a guarded area. And it's very expensive, and there's been a lot of different things about, well, what about expanding an area? You're still, even if you expand the guarded area within Flagler Beach, you're only expanding a guarded area by so much, and you're still within this geographic bottleneck where you're trying to get all these people into this very small area. So the question was, is it worth looking at different locations, whether it be Marineland or anywhere else in the county, of adding guarded coverage for all our residents that are wanting to go to the beach?
And I will say, I know we've had, at least I've had discussions with the administrator, but as you said, it's the end of the season, so I think we've got some time still to work on that issue, but I know the last meeting did generate some discussion about, for our facilities, Varn Park or Bay Drive Park, but again, it's a budget issue as well, so And Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, just quickly, so everybody knows, I think we all do, that for that area where the lifeguards are, Flagler Beach, there's coordination between the county, Tourist Development Council, and the city of Flagler Beach, where we have interlocal agreement in being, and we kind of share it 50-50 right now. So that's where the money is coming from right now. It's coming from the city of Flagler Beach and the Tourist Development Council, and that's an ILA that's in being. So I guess it's something to look at for the future, and there is a model for it. We have the ILA that exists right now, and there's numbers associated with it. So we could probably fairly easily figure out how much it would cost to do additional locations. Now, you know, that becomes a question for all the various cities and councils and all that kind of thing. But we have a lot of data on that, I guess would be my point.
Commissioner? The importance of this is health safety again. And in Marineland, we believe that we want to join with you in that because we have rocks on our beach, and it seems to be mindful. If we have had issues, and it takes, seconds after someone is having some issues, it takes moments that we need to have someone there. And we believe if we have 1 to 2 lifeguards, we could actually overcome that. And I disagree with the fact that we are out of our season. My season is starting. So I don't know what's happening somewhere else, but on my beach, it seems to ramp up starting now. So I would be glad to join hands with you and see that. So if this is a meeting for us to work with Flagler County, I'll put my name in the hat for needing a lifeguard.
Absolutely, thank you.
Just a quick question from a data perspective. Do you all have data on either number of saves or the effectiveness or the efficiency? Only because if you want to sell the program, if you were able to indicate that by adding X number of guards, it would be that much safer. I mean, it's a no-brainer that lifeguards are important, but that would be very helpful, especially for those of us that aren't on the beach.
Councilwoman?
Somewhat related to that, I would say that as a part of the survey that you all are going to give to your beachgoers, that's what entices them to the beach in that area. If it is a lifeguard, in fact, then you actually have reason to look at funding lifeguards further down the beach. Otherwise, if a lifeguard isn't one of the reasons that they get pulled to that core, it may not be money best spent. So I think that needs to be a primary factor or issue that's on the survey as you guys move forward.
Okay. I think that covers it. Thank you. The last one for the Flagler Beach is discussion creation of a joint reuse water discharge property for water not consumed by utility customers when precipitation levels are high.
Correct, and I'm going to save you some time. This is about the reuse water issue, and Palm Coast has interest in this. Flagler Beach has interest in this, and so does County. However, we have not been able to work this issue much since the last meeting. We have a new city manager, and he's not been able to tackle this one. So if y'all would be okay, Chair, by pushing this to the next meeting, that would help a lot.
Okay, we can do that. Thank you very much. All right, the Flagler County issues, we added, if it's acceptable with the group, Greg Pugh from the Dunes District is here and was going to speak to the committee here about the Dunes Bridge. So if we can jump to that so that he can get on with his day, would that be acceptable? Okay. Come on up. The mic is yours, sir. Just introduce yourself for everybody again and what you do.
Sure. Is the PowerPoint? Okay. Good evening. My name is Greg Pugh. I'm the district manager for the Dunes Community Development District, and I'm here to brief you about the intersection of Camino del Mar and Hammock Dunes Parkway and what we're doing with that. And I guess to be realistic, and I told this to the Flagler County Commissioners the first time I did this, I'm an engineer, and I'd love to tell you that's riveting to go through this presentation, but it's about traffic too. So just trying to manage expectations for this presentation. Is there a clicker's coming? Thank you. All right. This is actually the intersection itself. Just to orient you, this leg here at the bottom, that's coming off of the Hammock Dunes Bridge. The leg to the left is coming from A1A. The leg to the top is going to Ocean Hammock, and the leg to the right is going to Hammock Dunes. In 2000, a little bit of history, in 2018, we noticed that the bridge was backing up quite a bit. So our board authorized a traffic study with Kissinger, Campo and Associates to determine, what was the problem. And obviously additional traffic, but we found that the intersection was going to fail in 2031. And by fail, I mean there'll be too much traffic, the wait times will be unacceptable. If you were there in the spring, in March, it was the worst traffic. It was horrible. I actually sat through, I was the third car going into the toll bridge, and it took me 20 minutes to clear this intersection. So in 2031, that's what the traffic's going to be like all the time. About 13,000 vehicles go through that intersection every day. And the strange thing about the backups, though, is they're between noon and 2 o'clock. And I've asked the traffic engineers, what's wrong with this? And they can't tell me. They do not know why. Next slide is, you're going to ask me, Greg, what are you going to do about this problem? And so in 2024, next fiscal year, the board has authorized us to redesign the intersection. And we're going to spend about $300,000 doing that. And the improvements on that's going to be $2.1 million. And I've also got a picture of our toll booth and the entrance to it. And why that's important is toll revenues support all the transportation improvements within the district. We do not levy taxes on transportation, transportation issues, so it's all through the toll revenue. Next, I'll go over the proposed intersection so you can see this. Oops. This is a drawing of the proposed intersection. To orient you again, this is coming out of Ocean Hammock. This is coming off of the Hammock Dunes Bridge. This is going to A1A, and this is going to Ocean Hammock. Everything on this intersection, we intend to add lanes. We're going to widen everything to the west or the top of the drawing right here. This inset here, you can see what lanes we're going to add. Coming off the bridge, there'll be a dedicated left turn lane and also a straight and right turn lane. Same thing coming from Ocean Hammock, we'll have the same configuration. Coming off from A1A, we'll have a dedicated right turn lane and a straight and left turn lane. So that will be what we're going to do at the intersection itself. Next slide, or the next slide, our other initiative that we are looking at is having the Dune CDD is investigating an integration with the SunPass system. So we're doing a study in this upcoming year to see if that's possible. But obviously, if we go to this, we have to fix the intersection first. So the intersection will happen. Otherwise, we would just overload that entire intersection. And this is my best picture that I have. It's of the parkway itself. So I just thought I'd throw that up there. Any questions?
Chairman?
The reason we're doing this is at the last meeting, we talked about there's only two ways across the Intercoastal Waterway, Route 100 and the Dunes Bridge. So it's good to know that it just happened to be in coordination that they are doing what they can on the Hammock Dunes Bridge. It's not going to fix the problem, but it will help a little to get people across the Intercoastal. So that's where I think it's, thank you, Greg, for coming and giving this update, and the fact they're going to spend $2.5 million basically to improve the intersection. And so appreciate you coming, and it's a good update.
Excuse me.
Mayor.
Yes, I have a question. Can you go back to your drawing? I want to ask just a question for my own edification. So you have two lanes coming out of Camino del Mar. You have two lanes going, basically you have a traffic issue coming over the bridge, and you have two lanes there, but you don't have another lane on going out on Camino del Mar. Is there a possibility that you could put another lane there? Because what I notice is that we have a problem when you come over going on towards A1A. I see traffic incidences there. So is it not in the feasibility, or is there a reason why we didn't add an additional lane there or an additional pathway there for movement? Have you also studied, I know that your bike path is over there, but what about the people who ride the bike path on the road? What about moving it on Camino del Mar, because it's coming towards Marineland, of course, over a little bit there?
Coming off the bridge, most of the backups occur in that turning left onto Camino del Mar, as you were saying.
Yes, sir.
So we will have a dedicated turn left lane there. Part of our problem is unless we improve the bridge, expand it, and that's not in the books at all, is the abutments. We can only stack traffic so far.
Well, I'm asking you to actually alleviate traffic down line. As you turn the corner, could we make it 2-lane there so you have a total of 4 lanes?
The traffic engineers don't feel that this is going to be a bottleneck once this happens. Anything that's bottled up is coming from A1A and Camino del Mar intersection. And unfortunately, that's not the Dunes' problem, that's going to be a DOT problem.
Right, and we have, as I understand, DOT is analyzing that intersection on A1A. So DOT is aware of those issues with that intersection, and as far as I know, is doing an analysis now.
So Camino del Mar is a state road, is what you're saying?
Well, only within the right-of-way. Camino del Mar is his, but
Well, we're having my issue is I'm sitting on the other side of the bridge. When I come over and turn, I'm having to wait. So I'm saying, could we put another road in there?
You're waiting here to get into this lane?
No, I'm waiting on the other side
on
of the
A1A.
bridge.
You're backed up on A1A?
No, I'm backed up on Dunes Parkway. I've been backed up there at the toll booth.
That's where these additional turn lanes, most of it is the left turn. That's the problem. And it's because we can't get it through the intersection. Once we get through the intersection, then Camino del Mar is not the problem.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to understand, wrap my head around that. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Cooley.
So I'm not a traffic engineer, so just some layman questions. I'm assuming that integration of SunPass would speed things up quite a bit, which would have a bearing on your study, I would assume, correct?
The problem with if we took the tolls off and we just went through with the SunPass, this intersection would get worse because all of the traffic the bottleneck is going to be at this 4-way stop. So we first have to fix the intersection. Otherwise, we're going to have a bigger problem.
So that brings me to my other question. The other question would be, is a roundabout a possibility? I know some people have adverse reactions to roundabouts, but it keeps traffic moving.
I do get this question quite a bit. 2 reasons why we are not really looking at a roundabout. 1, I don't have the property to build a roundabout in this intersection. The other is I have a peak traffic problem. And roundabouts are great for moving traffic in off-peak hours, but signals are still the best way to move traffic through during peak periods of time. Now, our first improvements will not include a traffic signal. The board does not want to put a traffic signal at this time. We'll evaluate it after we add these additional lanes.
On this side? Yes, Councilwoman.
Do you have a projected timeline for this?
Design is going to be this coming fiscal year 24, and hopefully construction will start in fiscal year 25.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time, for coming and educating us, and I appreciate that.
All right, thank you all.
All right, so we will move back to, we've only got 2 items on the county. These should go really quick as well. Wanted to have a discussion. This was an item I brought forward about the discussion of joint planning regarding impacts at the Colbert, Roberts Road, John Anderson, Highway 100 area. Mr. Cooley alluded to the number of units within the area. And so this is all 3 of at least Flagler Beach, Palm Coast, and the county have properties all coming together at the same point. I think a a unified approach to the growth and the infrastructure in the area is important. I don't think we have to solve anything at this point other than I think we all have, during review processes, we share documents, and so City of Flagler Beach with the car wash or with the apartments requested comments, and I think when we give comments back from the municipalities that they, be taken seriously and worked and looked at. Same with the City of Palm Coast, those areas. But again, I don't know the next steps for this other than maybe enhancing our communications on these projects. I see an issue from the proposed BJs all the way up to this area. Foresight, that's the draw, going to be a significant draw from the beach and this section and the whole county anyway, going down to BJ. So we have a great relationship working with the city on those reviews back and forth, but just wanted to, if you've got any comments on this or other suggestions, we're open just to make sure we're looking at infrastructure needs moving forward.
So this obviously is an ongoing issue. We're growing exponentially. I would just recommend that we think about one another when we're looking at developments, plans, things like that. Infrastructure needs are, at least for us, we've made quite a few appropriations asks regarding infrastructure that will affect the county and neighboring cities. So when we're looking at appropriations asks, I think that's something we also need to keep in focus. And they've been regional asks as well on our list. But, from the standpoint of technically doing something kind of formalized, I don't know what can really be done from a formalized standpoint. I think that as we're approving projects and we're looking at infrastructure, there's definitely mechanisms to communicate and keep each other informed. I'm open to any suggestions. I don't mean to leave you out over here. I'm so sorry, Mayor. I'm open to suggestions on what formal mechanism can be put in place. I just don't know what that is. I think it's more of a mindfulness. We need to be mindful of how the decisions we make affect the county and our neighboring municipalities, and keep those lines of communications open and show up at each other's meetings. I know I've only been to a few of BOCC meetings, so shame on me for that. But I do think that it's more of we need to be mindful of one another more than something formalized, but obviously open to suggestions to work together.
Yes, Mayor Alvin.
The only thing, agreed. The only thing I would add to that is I think that we might be more transparent in in the sharing of our traffic study information jointly. In other words, each of the groups that are working on the developments in this particular case has some access to traffic study. And I think that if we were more transparent, we might better see what the result of these developments within the different municipalities might have on the area as a whole.
And I guess another point, right, of our municipalities, the City of Palm Coast has their own traffic engineer and traffic staff, which the county doesn't. I know the other municipalities are much smaller and don't. So it could be, even in that additional review from others, if there was a need to maybe in an interlocal to do some type of traffic concurrent reviews would be helpful, because it's a specialized part of that development process. Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
I totally agree on this, but that particular intersection, there is light there now, but the land is all private. There's no quick expansion in that intersection now, and it's going to be another one of those problems is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger with the thousands of units that are coming into that area, and then to go across the bridge. But we'll just have to see
All
how
right.
it goes.
Well, again, just to raise the awareness, I know in talking with our attorney and staff, I think there's, we'll just do we'll share some ideas and make that better. But thank you for your time, for listening to that. Commissioner Sullivan wanted to briefly talk about the tourism
Carlos, you
statistics.
have that one slide. This is real quick to follow up with Eric. The Tourist Development Council and Amy and her group, we've been doing analysis of visitor statistics and all that for many years, and we have money. We have money to do. It's up. It's up. This is. I asked Amy just to come up with something to get us started. This will give you an idea where the statistics are right now. And a lot of this is backed up with detail. But as you can see in the top visitor activities, 82% beach, 75% dine locally, 62% outdoor recreation, 37% water recreation. It's a good, I think this will be a good starting point. And then top areas visited, Flagler Beach, 80%. Palm Coast, 43%. This place people go while they're here. Hammock Beach area, 29%. Beverly Beach, 10%. And Bunnell, well, I can't even read that, 3%, or 2%. So that's a starting point. And you can, and we can, I always worry about reinventing the wheel. And if you're going to do another study, at least take advantage of what's there now and then improve on it and get a little more detail. But anyway, I just wanted to show that as a good starting point.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mayor.
It should be noted that Marineland's not been studied, and we are still part of the county, and we think that we would have some interest, and that brings me to the point of my next set of information when our agenda item comes up. So we would like to remain putting our name in on the tickets of being studied.
Good point.
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to bring it forward, that's all.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mayor Timbrook, you have the floor for your Marineland item.
Yes, so as we all know, Marineland is one of the most important places in our county. And so we have a lot of tourist influx with our amazing attractions, the University of Florida Whitney Labs, our other constituents, as well as our marina and so forth. So many people have come through the town of Marineland. We are one of the oldest towns in Flagler County. And it is time that we make a bigger stand, a larger stand. So through the course of conversation with our stakeholders, we came across a grant that we feel is appropriate for us to maintain the remarkable coastal place that we have always been. And so with the Climate Resiliency Regional Challenge, we were alerted to this through the North Florida Regional Council for Resiliency. And so through course of contacts, we looked into the town of Marineland purchasing more land in the town. And so we have made application for a letter of intent for Track 2 of the NOAA Climate Resilience Regional Challenge. And we are asking for assistance and interest from all of our constituents as well as community partners in the area to support us as we try to attain 10.5 acres inside of our town to develop a community center that would resemble a modern look with resiliency focused, forward-thinking facility. And the reason is, as you all know, we don't have a lot of residents, but we have a lot of transient residents. 6 months of the year, we have researchers from all over the country come into town of Marineland to study whales, turtles, sea level rise, new aquatic species, and they have no place to go to live. The housing issue again. And so what we have found is that we could actually generate wealth as a town, or funding, as a town in heads and beds instead of cars and garages. And so due to the fact that we have this very special place that Marineland is and that we all know has been, we are trying to do a low density amount of development in our town so that we are able to maintain the gateway to the 42,000 acres of the GTM NER, that we are able to maintain the Old Florida beach opportunity, and that we are able to maintain the University of Florida's expansion to bring more researchers to our community. And we feel that it is important to all of the communities around us, Palm Coast and so forth, that there is a facility, a place for people to go to see what Florida has been and will be. And we feel like we are specially positioned to be able to develop something that is spectacular for not only our residents, but our future residents, and for all the people that will join us. And so we are seeking a grant currently, and in the future we were looking for appropriations going forward to help our town develop in a thoughtful, resilient, regenerative way that, kind of uniquely pushes all the historical, recreational, cultural, and natural attractions together. And so we are seeking, you can obviously see our collaborators that we have worked. And so as the need of this commission, or this joint commissions, we would like to have assistance and guidance to help us attain these grants. And going forward, we would like to have positions on boards that make decisions for tourism and other things, so that our town can evolve into a gem of a place that doesn't look like the rest of your places, that maintains what we have within our town. So that is what we brought forward. We wanted you guys to all be aware of what we are doing in a forward look of 50 years. That is where we are going. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, and I'm taking questions as you need.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Ms. Cooley.
Just real quick, is there anything to support that initiative that municipalities can do for Marineland?
Yes, so we will actually probably be looking at various legislative things. We are not looking to get the kinds of funding that you guys are getting. We're looking to do a little bit of a different kind of thought process of how we gain revenues within our town to keep our town alive. We want to have, 50 to 60 residents. The other thing, the challenge that we're having is that we have the University of Florida. Many of you may or may not know, the University of Florida has wiped out dormitory housing there in Marineland. So all of the students who have studied there in the past, their housing has been eliminated, as well as the professors. And so we have postdoc students who make a very small amount of money, whereas we could do transient housing for them inside of this envelope of what we're trying to develop in the 10-acre spot that would give them 6-month lease opportunities and so forth. So we're asking for guidance. If people have tried or seen other things, we would like to really work on that. The affordable housing or attainable housing is very important to us because we feel that we are different than the rest of them. Yeah, we have beachfront that's very desirable, but it's 2 acres. Yet the town owns, the town and the county together collaboratively have a shared river to sea. And so we want to be more mindful of the resources we have for Flagler County and for the residents and the future visitors with low impact but high amounts of educational opportunity, research opportunity for us. Let us be the place we've always been. And that encompasses the Greenbelt circle that Al Hadid told me about years and years ago, so that we do the right thing for our town. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. I know that we don't often get invited and show up to a lot of places, but you'll see us more coming up in the future. So thank you. I should recognize that my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Inks, is here tonight.
Anything, again, that reach out to us if we can help in any way, support the grant, look at it. You know of the legislative delegation meeting coming up. Are you aware of that?
Yes, we have. We are fast approaching those things.
Okay.
And, I apologize if we do things a little different than everyone else. We are a small but mighty place, and there's a few of us that are running as fast as we can. So please keep us in mind if we don't show up or you don't hear from us. There's probably a reason, and it could be that we're not just receiving the information.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when the time comes, if you will let us know, we would certainly request of our board to give you a letter of support as a beginning to help you in your endeavors. I know lots of times that does help. And
Yes.
I feel like my board would be supportive of that, although I'm not speaking for them, I'm speaking for me, but I would be willing to offer that up and ask and see if we can get that for you.
Thank you so much. We are seeking that. We have sent a letter of intent. We won't know until October if we can make that. They will allow us to submit, but it is an understanding. So we are in a situation that's a little different. We are considered socially, so we have the numbers of financial situations that are less than everyone else in the county. So we are kind of being held at a different standard, and we're considered rural. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we can check off but it's just a different look. Being able to get university students and so forth, we want to encourage them to come in our area.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. The last but not least, we'll have two items from the City of Palm Coast. If you wanted, Mayor, if you wanted to speak to the marketing issue, the increased marketing, do you have anything to add to that item, Councilman Pontieri?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're in the middle of our budget towards the tail end of our budget process, obviously right now. A part of that is obviously Parks and Rec and Communications. So I would almost ask to let us readdress this as our budget is approved and really be able to look at what we can contribute from a citywide perspective and really marketing all of our freshwater parks. I know we did our Plan Our Parks, and we did that in conjunction with the county. And one of the the most consistent feedback we got was that people wanted more access to water. So I think naturally it will come that we are going to be marketing all of the ways that you can access water in our parks. And that will be done through our marketing team in Parks and Rec. But at this time, we haven't really, I don't think, and I can definitely work with staff on this obviously as well, but we're naturally going to go in that direction, but to give specific details right now, I just don't have them.
And I can add, I know from the county's standpoint, we have a big legislative request for the Eco Discovery Center, which again highlights the trails aspect for ecotourism, but also in history and ecology. And we're starting the process for the design of the Bulow Regional Park and the associated trails with that. So it's, I think through our tourism agency, there is a big increase in the marketing of alternative recreation other than beaches, and the trails and ecotourism and is a huge component of that.
So I think if anything, maybe we should put our teams together then to make sure we're not spending money on the same things, but we're complementing one another. That can definitely be something that we do in conjunction with one another.
Yep, I agree. Anybody have any questions, or did you want to slide into your next issue?
Why not? So I just, obviously I brought up at our city council meeting, I believe a few weeks ago, just loosely talking about better usage of Malacompra. And then yesterday it was added on to our workshop, rather last minute. And I want to be very clear that this is simply an idea and a concept. It obviously has not been fleshed out. But I do think that it is an idea and a concept that we need to look at seriously, and then it needs to be looked at as a forward-thinking thing. That is one theme I think that we've heard tonight over and over and over, is that nothing that we're talking about in this meeting is going to happen immediately. These are all forward-looking ideas, concepts, and initiatives. I look at Malacompra as a beautiful piece of property that I don't believe is being utilized to its maximum potential. And so with the idea of possibly annexing it into the city, I look at our Parks and Rec budget, I look at our marketing budget and our Parks and Rec bandwidth, and I think to myself, we could really do something special with Malacompra. We want to preserve its integrity, but we want to improve it. And this would accomplish so many different things that we've all been talking about here tonight. We heard tonight from Flagler Beach that paid parking at the beach is inevitable. And I think one of the broad, from Mayor Emmett, all the way down to the end of Flagler Beach, one of the broad things that we all agree is that when paid parking is implemented, it's going to drive beachgoers elsewhere. So where else do they go? They could go to Bay Drive, they could go to some of our other freshwater parks, but if they're looking for beach, where else are they going to go? And we could really turn Malacompra into a beautiful beach. And the reason I find it to be beneficial, obviously, to annex into the city is that nearly 97,000 of the 130,000 residents in the county are in Palm Coast, and we don't own any shoreline. And people may say to themselves, and I've heard this often, well, what's the big deal? Nothing is precluding Palm Coast residents from going to Flagler Beach now. And you're absolutely right, and the argument can be made in the reverse as well. If Palm Coast owned it, nothing would prevent county beachgoers from going there. The problem is right now, Palm Coast doesn't have any vested interest in any shoreline without relying on a third party. So we rely on Flagler Beach, we rely on the county for maintenance of parks, upkeep of parks, creating parks that are on the beach. This is a very small piece of the beach that Palm Coast can really go in and improve. And annexation isn't the only option. It's the one that's been highlighted for obvious reasons. But, you know, the river to sea joint ownership was spoken about at this meeting. So that's a possibility, joint ownership between the county and the city, I think. But, you know, it's my position that, and I'm hoping that I can get more people on board with this, that this would solve a lot of the problems that we are experiencing countywide. And it is forward-looking because we're talking about an influx of population that's going to be coming to the beach in the next 5-10 years. And so this isn't something that has to happen immediately. And it's not something that has to be, well, we're just going to annex it in and that's it. We can enter into deed restrictions, we can enter into annexation agreements. There can be certain mechanisms in place to make sure that we are preserving the beach, that we are taking into consideration the residents that are out there and what their desires and their probably hesitations are with this occurring. So, you know, I hope that we can have an open discussion as to what that could look like, but I wanted to be very clear that this wasn't my effort to say we want to do a land grab. This is just an idea and an initiative, and I haven't heard many other ideas out there of how we can spread people out on the beach other than, well, let's look at lifeguards and paid parking. So if Palm Coast can step in, take a little bit of the beach and really improve it, I think that could really solve a lot of our problems.
All right, and I'm gonna, I think with this discussion, I gave you some leeway. This really isn't, as I understand it, Palm Coast there wasn't consensus on approval of this. This is still your idea. This is
Well, there was consensus to allow me to bring it and discuss it, and then, and Mayor, please, if you want to step in at some point, and then kind of get what the feel of this board is, and then at that point, bring it back to our board once again.
all right. So I don't want it to get sideways, but I think until the city actually formulates a proposal that has buy-in from all the members, we should probably just limit our input. But Mayor, did you?
So just for the record, so City Council did discuss the issue as a workshop item just yesterday. It is appropriate for it to be brought forward here this evening, but I would agree with you that we could discuss this again at a later time when it appears next on the agenda.
Okay, so feedback, if you had any for Councilman Pontieri. Mayor Cooley, Mr. Cooley.
Just as general feedback, as far as the nuts and bolts of that location or any other location or anything like that, I would not be able to comment on. However, the concept of a municipality taking ownership of or working to have ownership of getting their citizens, you know, good beach access or improving their ability to have good beach access, I think is in line with what our initiatives are. You know, it's up to Palm Coast how to get there, but the initial premise of the meeting is it started as in 5 years plus, we're going to have a very large growth in population. And within that growth, we started looking at our own small geographic area. And can this small geographic area accommodate what that future growth is going to be? And the answer was probably not. And so I think the rationale of doing that is probably in line, and I appreciate any efforts that the leadership of Palm Coast has as far as, you know, acknowledging your residents are probably moving to Palm Coast, and one of the main reasons is for beach access, if not canals and all the other benefits of Palm Coast and the park system. But it's also beach access is probably first and foremost. And by that municipality taking ownership of saying we need to ensure that our residents can have good beach access, and we can't just rely on the city of Flagler Beach, which probably won't be able to handle that far down the line, along with additional tourism, increased county population, and then decreased parking due to natural disasters. You the effort is acknowledged and, appreciated. I don't know anything about the nuts and bolts of it, though, but I think that concept is definitely, Commissioner Spradley, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that at all.
The idea of access is important, and we began with that at the last meeting. And so without picking any particular property, Flagler Beach is just jammed, and parking will give only some relief, probably the biggest relief, paid parking that is, if that were to come. And, and ironically, as it's been discussed, probably the biggest relief would come from people wanting to avoid paid parking and going elsewhere. So I'm in agreement that the idea of alternatives and better access to the beach at the points that already exist but aren't being utilized, it's important. And that goes back to what we started at the last meeting. Thank you.
Mayor?
Forgive my question, but I just have a question. Palm Coast goes to the beach with the hammocks, correct? So that's private, and the citizens of Palm Coast can't use that? Is that why we want to get the Malacompra as a public beach?
The hammock is in unincorporated,
Unincorporated Flagler.
right,
So,
up to the limits, up to marine land.
okay, just an idea. Do we have public access in the unincorporated area of where the hammocks and hammocks dunes is?
Yes, multiple.
And so we don't have Palm Coast residents could use those.
Absolutely, anybody can. They're open to the entire county and non-county.
So I have a question. My question is very simple. That would be contiguous. So could we annex, and obviously that would give Palm Coast some more revenues. Could we get that sort of section, the Hammock Beach, into Palm Coast? Can you help me understand that?
Well, I mean, it's all within unincorporated. There's multiple accesses through Bay Drive, Varn Park, Malacompra. So
I'm just trying to understand why we would want to. I'm just trying to understand the thought process is all I'm trying to understand, so I can be supportive or not of why we just didn't go contiguous into our land with the hammocks group, the hammocks dunes area. Why we wouldn't have used them to try to annex those folks or that group, that landmass into our section.
Well, there's rules about annexation, so you just can't annex an isolated piece of property. So there's statutes that govern annexation.
Oh, I understand. I'm working on annexation currently in marine land. I'm just trying, but it's contiguous to me. So I'm trying to understand is the hammocks are contiguous as I see it. Maybe I have it incorrect. To Palm Coast, coming with over the Palm Coast Bridge. I'm just understanding your thought process, just so I can understand. Well, excuse me, the dunes. Right, but what I'm not trying to understand is when you come across.
I think I understand your question, if I may.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So this specific land was picked for a couple reasons. One, there is a way to make it contiguous. Two, I think that this actually will have less impact on residents in the hammock than doing what you're suggesting. Now, I'm open to any ideas that would accomplish this end goal. It's an end goal of beach access for the residents of Palm Coast. So if there's another mechanism to get there, I'm all ears. But I do think that it would impact a very small amount of actual residents in the hammock area to go this route, which is my goal. I don't have any desire to do a land grab or try to annex more property than necessary to give the residents of Palm Coast their own beach access. But open to ideas if it's possible and it will have those same minimal impacts. And also to add on to answer the question, there's a lot of parking already at Malacompra, whereas some of these other beach access, to Commissioner Dance's point, they don't have that same amount of parking that Malacompra currently provides.
Yeah, so it's not an issue of access. That was brought up a couple times about improving access. It's not an issue about access. There's access to the beach.
So I want to make sure I understand you correctly. So for clarification, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that Palm Coast residents have access if they go straight ahead into the unincorporated hammocks area.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand. Thank you.
All right, so we're pushing the limits. You're good? Mayor Emmett, anything? Okay. I want to do, we'll try and get some public comment in. I just want to do a summary of the issues, if we can go down, issues that you want to bring back for next meeting. So Mayor, did you want to bring anything back? Okay. So City of Flagler Beach, which issues you want to bring back?
City of Flagler Beach needs to bring back reuse water. And I believe there, maybe not next meeting, but a further meeting into the season about the expanded lifeguard coverage in different areas of the county. The homelessness issue, I think, is probably worth looking at, seeing what we need to go back to our boards, talk to our particular boards, and then just bring feedback to the next meeting. Commissioner Spradley, is that everything? Am I missing anything?
Well, maybe not the next meeting, but, you know, the paid parking topic needs to be addressed. That'll probably be worth a shout at virtually every meeting going forward.
Can you clarify what exactly you see us discussing with, that seems to be a pretty specific Flagler Beach issue. So how do you want us to help you with the paid parking issue?
I don't know that it is going to be exclusively Flagler Beach. I mean, perhaps. But I think that there may be openings for support for what Flagler Beach would want to do on the paid parking. There may be opportunities there that we could use some support. It's not going to be...
That helps, thank you. I got it.
If I could just interject, if Flagler Beach, if and when Flagler Beach does do that, I think that it would be unfair for us not to include other municipalities, and at least in that thought process on, us potentially making a decision that would have an unfavorable impact to our neighbors. And I think collaboratively, whether it be through passes or any type of, funding or financing, working with other governments, there could be a money savings for local Flagler County citizens that are parking at the beach also. So they wouldn't pay potentially what a tourist would pay. Just the reason why it's on here is because I think it requires input from everybody, because we're all county residents, and it will have an impact.
Oh, that helps, thank you. City Bunnell, did you want to have anything? Okay. Mayor Emmett? Okay. City Palm Coast?
You done? Okay. I would just underline Commissioner Sullivan's point that, we all sit on very many committees and meetings, and I would like to bring back those items that are specific to the original initiative, which is Flagler Beach. So we stay focused. This particular group, that does not mean that the other items are any less important, but for us to be productive, I think that's a good idea, to stay focused on the things that would specifically relieve the issue that initiated this group in the first place.
And do we have, Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that as we do the marketing studies, that you guys stay in touch with our tourist development group. That's all. It's to make sure we're in sync with that. You take advantage of what's already there.
Commissioner Dance, may I? Sorry.
Yes.
I will work with staff, and I'm hoping that our marketing team can reach out to you all to see if there's some type of joint initiative that we can work on and bring back to this committee as far as marketing other water parks, the different trails that have that water access, et cetera. But additionally, I would encourage anybody who does have any ideas with regards to additional beach access that we can really draw. And I don't mean, a few beachgoers here and there. I mean, actually draw a good amount of people somewhere away from that core in Flagler Beach. Not looking at just annexation of Malacompra in a silo, but more broadly. If there are other ideas, please come to me with them, and let's have an open discussion as to what mechanism, as Commissioner Cooley put it, the nuts and the bolts, what we can do to make this happen in some way that works well with all of our residents. I would definitely welcome that and hope we can talk about it again.
I'll keep the joint planning on there to see if we can flesh that out for next time. This doesn't preclude adding additional items, but I mean, as you go back to your boards, if you want to bring anything back, and if we keep it, I think from what Commissioner Sullivan, Mayor Alphen said, is to try and keep it focused on those issues where we can all help Flagler Beach. And then when do we look at a next meeting? Does anybody thought of when do you want to reconvene so that we've got time to properly plan? Are we looking in January-ish?
It originally was discussed about a quarterly basis, but no specific time frame.
Okay. But probably after the new year and with the holidays and everything else. Okay. That'll help. Well, at least we can kind of think about that as you go back to your boards and you have time to flesh some of these out. All right. We're past our hour and a half, but we've got some people in the audience, so I want to make sure everybody has a chance. I mean, our business here and is for the residents, us to be able to hear the residents. So if you would like to come up for public comment, please keep your comments as brief as you can, and we'll get out of it. Just state your name, where you're from, and I don't have we do have a timer.
Oh, we got the timer. Good evening, Valerie Clymer. I've actually been a resident of Palm Coast since 1998, and I am currently an AHAC committee member. When it comes to homelessness, I think we need to keep in mind that we've got a lot of people that don't want to be homeless. How many students are sent home with backpacks of food? How many students are sleeping on a friend's couch or in their mom and dad's car? Unfortunately, we do have a very, very big affordable housing crisis. And we're not talking low income. We're talking our workforce. When it comes to affordable housing, we need to do something here. We need to do it now, not 3 to 5 years from now. I work with people all day long, and when you see a teacher, a firefighter, a 911 operator, so on and so forth, city workers, county workers. I have a gentleman that works for the city of Palm Coast. His wife works for the school board. Combined, they cannot afford a home. How do we keep these people working here if we cannot house them? If an average of $48,000 a year is the income, and it says we can't use more than 30%, I don't know if you realize, but that's only $1,200 a month that should be being used for housing. Where do we find that? How do we keep people working here? Some of the people I deal with on a daily basis, we're training them, and then we're losing them to other counties because they pay more and there's affordable housing in the area. We need to fight for our people. We need to keep our people working here, and we need to provide them with a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey there.
Jane Mealy, City of Flagler Beach. I had some similar thoughts to what you just heard. In looking at these items, I kind of see the possibility of combining some of them, such as the homelessness and affordable housing. Because I think if we truly come up with an affordable housing situation, then we could have fewer homeless. It won't ever solve all of it. I agree with very little of what Mr. Mayor Emmett said at the beginning. And I hate to do that, I'm sorry, but not all homeless people are drug addicts. Just like what this lady said, there are teachers sleeping in their cars. There are police officers' families sleeping in their cars because they can't afford to live anywhere. I think of the 100 or so employees in the city of Flagler Beach, I think we have 3 or 4 that can afford to live there. So So I think if we talk about affordable housing and homelessness together, I think we can do it. Mayor Alphen, you pointed out that the legislature has kind of started looking at it. There was Senate Bill 102 this year, part of which I totally disagree with, but I like the affordable housing part of it, but it does need more fleshing out, I guess. I also see combining the paid parking and the extra lifeguards in other parts of the county as being a combined issue, because if the county were to put lifeguards at Barn Park, then fewer people would have to come to Flagler Beach, and we wouldn't have to worry about paid parking. So, and I'm using up my time. So, and Marineland, it's really good to hear more from you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
My name's James Powell. I'm a resident in the Hammock Dunes area. I have to go through that intersection every day, and I have kids, and there's no educational opportunities on that side of the bridge. So right now my kids go to Palm Coast schools, but I didn't know if that's something that could be worked together between Flagler County, Palm Coast, Marineland, and that stretch of beach. There's more and more younger families, and there's no educational opportunities unless we have to drive 25 minutes in the longer that intersection, which I know that peak time, why that is. It's because I have to drive my kids to school. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to come up to talk to the committee? All right.
Rick Bellumer, Flagler Beach. Mayor Alphen's suggestion, getting back to affordable housing again, the thought of doing prefabricated houses could put a community together very quickly. I, for instance, can use an example from where I'm from. Martin's, Glen L. Martin, built an aircraft factory way outside of Baltimore, and that's all that was there. There was a runway and an airplane factory during the war, and no place for the workers to live. So they shipped in prefab houses created with California redwood, and they built 1.5 houses a day, and occupied houses per day. And I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them done. So the workers had a place to live. So, and they're cheap. You know, they weren't any special house. It was 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a tiny kitchen, and walls that were just put together in sections. So there was no insulation in them, but not saying that the standards would be the same today, but that's a great idea. All we need is the land somewhere.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm so happy that I am here to participate now and to hear what is being discussed. It is a bit concerning.
Did you say your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, that's right. See, Andy, I assumed everybody knew me. Sandra Shank. I'm happy to be here. It's a bit concerning that it's apparent that we don't know the definition of homelessness. And even when we ask to have the affordable housing stricken from the agenda, that shows a total lack of concern for a very large part of the people who vote, pay taxes, and sustain this community. So I'm actually quite appalled at that. But I would like to share the federal education definition of homelessness so that we can understand the people of whom we are speaking about. If we want to have people to pay for parking, you want to have beach access, you want those things, then we have to have a place for people to live. I'm quite sure when you go home and eat dinner tonight, you had to purchase the food somewhere, locally in a grocery store, if not a fast food restaurant. Those people are entitled to a place to live. The federal definition of homelessness is individuals who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Shelters, transitional housing, that includes domestic violence shelters. We have women and children who reside in a family life domestic violence shelter here. That's not a permanent residence. So Trish has a real difficult job oftentimes trying to find transitional adequate housing for those families who are living in shelters here in Flagler County, in a shelter here in Flagler County. Homeless shelters, we don't have a homeless shelter. I really commend Commissioner Cooley for the point that he made. If a person claims residency here, we have a responsibility to provide housing for them, not to ship them off. That's inhumane to even think in that way. To assume that someone has chosen this as a lifestyle is, again, a detachment from reality. There are people with mental health illnesses. That's not a choice. There are people that have lost their jobs. That's not a choice. Okay, I could go on and on. As you can see, I'm quite passionate about it. So when we look at youth shelters, trailers provided by FEMA, we have lots of youth who are in foster care in the state of Florida. They deserve a place to live when they age out of foster care. Hotels and motels. Did you know that the Microtel Inn is a quasi-shelter here in Flagler County? Staying in motels, hotels due to lack of adequate alternatives, regardless of who pays for the motel, hotel room. People who are staying with others, that means they are couch surfing. Staying with other people due to loss of housing, economic hardship, as Commissioner Spradley pointed out, or a similar reason. And then the unsheltered. They are staying in their cars, parks, public spaces, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations, or similar settings. That's the definition of homelessness. We can't strike affordable housing from the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? I will just add that we'll probably take the recommendations of joining these together. So we'll look at homelessness, affordable housing as one item moving forward, and the other paid parking lifeguard kind of together so that we don't lose them from the agenda. But thank you, everybody, for coming, for the public for speaking, for everybody here, my esteemed fellow elected officials, Commissioner Cooley, on your continuing your initiative, and we will further add items. I don't know who the center person is, if it's Ms. Overstreet that is still coordinating on behalf of everything, so we'll funnel things through her for any additional agenda items and discussions on the next meeting date. So thank you, everybody. Have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.